So, Mr. President, I come to the floor today to talk about the need for more American energy. We are now in the coldest time of the year. The demand for energy is going up as people try to keep warm. This is placing a strain on our power grid across this country. This administration obviously has no solution for this problem. I think they're adding to the problem. The Biden administration is on a crusade to make us dependent on unreliable, renewable resources like wind and solar. You know, I'm not against wind and solar. I think it's very good. I think it's feasible that we invest in that. There's a role that it plays in our economy, but we can't depend on wind and solar. It's not possible. The sun doesn't shine every day, and the wind doesn't blow every day. Our energy grid needs to stay running for 24 hours. What a thought. Despite Joe Biden's best efforts, most of our energy grid today still comes from fossil fuels. And by the way, it will always come from fossil fuels unless we have another alternative, which I will talk about. But when wind and solar power fail, people don't realize this. When it fails, and at one time in my life, I had a huge wind turbine in my backyard, a couple hundred yards, and I noticed even if the wind didn't blow, the turbine still ran. It ran because it ran off of a diesel generator, better known as fossil fuels. You cannot run a modern economy without fossil fuels. It's impossible. I know we're talking about it every day, and you hear all the climate gurus talking about that, we've got to do away with fossil fuels. We got to be net zero, which, by the way, if we did net zero, we wouldn't live very long. Because, by the way, we do need carbon in the air. So, with wind and solar, we need an all-above approach to American energy production to keep prices low and capacity high. We have to have it. And how do we do that? We do it by investing in nuclear power. 1979, we were on the way to being energy independent through nuclear power. We had a problem at 3 Mile Island with a nuclear plant that went basically called, in our words, in the terms of this generation, berserk. They had problems. They had leaks. There was a media presence at that time that started attacking nuclear energy because it was going to kill everybody. Nuclear energy was going to be a disaster. At that time, we were constructing over 100 nuclear sites across the United States of America. 100. Closer to 150. Because of 3 Mile Island and how it scared, the media actually scared the people of this country, we scratched those plans. We quit construction. We said, we can't do this. We're going to kill everybody on the planet with nuclear energy. Right now, nuclear makes up about 20% of our energy grid, which if we hadn't stopped back in 1979, it would be much closer to 70, 80%. And we wouldn't have to be burning fossil fuels. I'm proud the United States is the most nuclear power production of any country in the world. I think it shows that we're a leader, but we should get back to it. We could be producing a lot more nuclear energy right now, but as I said earlier, the red tape from this administration and the climate cons, it's slowing permitting and production. We actually just opened, I think, the first nuclear plant in many, many years in the state of Georgia, in the southeastern part of the country, which will provide energy for thousands and thousands and thousands of people for years to come because of this, with zero carbon emissions, by the way. But the Biden administration is obsessed with wind and solar, but they know deep down that they can't touch nuclear energy. They know that their left-wing voting base hates nuclear energy. They hate it. I think we need to go back to the education department and start learning about nuclear energy. Everybody should be brought up to speed. Instead of being scared of it, we should adopt it. This opposition to nuclear power really has no basis and no fact. It's bad economics and it's bad environmental policy. So let's talk about the economics and let's talk about the environmental impact of nuclear energy. First, economics. Nuclear energy is the most efficient source of energy ever known to man. In fact, nuclear energy is 8,000 times more efficient than fossil fuels, 8,000 times. Fossil fuels are a lot more efficient than wind and solar, we know that. Nuclear energy is cheap to produce. Nuclear is also safe for the environment. And I'm going to repeat that. Nuclear energy is safe for the environment. My Democratic colleagues are worried about carbon emissions. So why not nuclear energy? But I hardly hear any of them ever champion nuclear energy, which produces zero emissions and remains and removes harmful pollutants from the atmosphere. Environmentalists claim that nuclear energy is dangerous. Environmentalists point to a few headlines from over the last 80 years, but they don't point to the facts. The fact is that our technology is better and better every day. We have different reactors that are unbelievable. They're cheaper to build, they're more efficient, they're almost 100% safe, they're salt-based, and they have zero possibility of any reactor that melts down or releases any radiation in the atmosphere. But what have we done? We've just disregarded it. We just said, oh, nuclear energy doesn't work, it's not safe, we're just going to get away from it. We better wake up and smell the roses. Nuclear energy is safer now than it was 40 years ago, and certainly 80 years ago. Our scientists have learned. I can understand the thoughts of years and years ago when we had different reactors that actually melted down. How many people died in 3 Mile Island in 1979? I think if you're really interested, you ought to go back and look at this. You ought to go back and look at the things that were brought up by the media that never came to fruition. So should it be clear, nuclear energy is a good investment and should be a big target for investment for years to come for the United States. You know, I'm deeply grateful, my state of Alabama, energy workers who are keeping the lights on for our people across our country. You know, right now, as we speak, there are thousands of Alabama energy workers off the Gulf Coast exploring for oil and gas. I'm also proud that Alabama is America's fifth largest producer of nuclear energy. We have 2 nuclear plants and 5 nuclear reactors. The Tennessee Valley Authority, which is run by the government, by the way, operates Brown Ferry in Athens, Alabama, which is TVA's largest nuclear plant. The Browns Ferry plant produces 1/5 of the TVA's energy, which covers a lot of the South. It directly supports 1,500 jobs and powers more than 2 million homes. In the Wiregrass of Alabama, which is the southeast part of the state, Alabama Power runs Plant Farley, which produces about 1/5 of the Alabama Power's electricity. I'm deeply grateful to Alabama's energy workers for keeping the lights on for all of us. It's clear we need to stop the obsession with wind and solar. We can use that. But we can do a better job of investing in nuclear energy. We need to fix the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Right now, it takes about 10 years 10 years to get a nuclear reactor approved in our country. There's no good reason that it should take so long. We also ought to support advanced small modular reactors called SMRs. They're safe, they're cheaper, and they're quicker to build. They're small reactors with lower demands for fuel. And by the way, we gave this technology to China back during the Obama administration. They are building them every day in Asia. They've taken our technology and using it. They can bring energy costs down and also emissions down. It's time we got to work on nuclear energy. The polls show the American people are becoming more and more supportive of nuclear power. There's no doubt about that. A clear majority of the American people want and need more nuclear plants. This should be a bipartisan issue. Let's look out for the American people. It's good economics. It's good energy policy. It's good for our environment. And it's long, long overdue.